Mount Rushmore stands out as an extraordinary monument, unlike most sculptures, which bear the clear marks of careful craftsmanship. Its massive presidential faces carved into the mountain almost appear as though they naturally emerged from the rock. Yet, this iconic work is not just a piece of art but also an engineering marvel. Remarkably, the team that brought Mount Rushmore to life had no formal artistic training. Instead, they were primarily gold miners who used jackhammers, dynamite, and innovative techniques to transform the mountain into an enduring masterpiece. To understand the monument's origins, we need to revisit the early 1920s. At the time, South Dakota, a state only a few decades old, was struggling to make its mark on the national stage. Doane Robinson, a state historian, envisioned a monumental sculpture to attract tourists. Inspired by the success of a new carving project in Georgia, Robinson reached out to sculptor Gutzon Borglum with the idea of creating a tribute to Wild West heroes. Borglum, however, believed that the monument would have a broader appeal if it featured national figures, particularly U.S. presidents. In 1925, Borglum traveled to South Dakota and found the perfect site, Mount Rushmore, a 500-foot-tall granite cliff with fine-grained stone ideal for carving. He envisioned colossal faces of George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Theodore Roosevelt, and Abraham Lincoln, symbolizing the birth, growth, preservation, and development of the United States. With this vision in mind, Borglum created a 1/12 scale model of the design. But turning this model into reality presented enormous challenges. Mount Rushmore was a remote wilderness with no roads, electricity, or infrastructure. In 1927, work began on building a road to the site, which allowed materials and workers to access the area. A village quickly sprang up at the mountain's base, complete with blacksmith shops, tool sheds, and housing for the labor force. To reach the cliff face, a massive wooden staircase was constructed, and a cable car system was installed to transport tools and materials. At the mountain summit, a winch house was built to allow operators to lower workers safely in small seats to any point on the rock face. The first task was to carve George Washington's head. Workers used dynamite to blast away large sections of rock, gradually shaping an egg-like form. After the rough outline was created, the team turned to jackhammers to refine the details. These tools, which weighed 30 kilograms each, were cumbersome and challenging to operate on a sheer cliff face. To power them, a building at the mountain's base housed 3 large air compressors, which were powered by electricity from a local gold mine. Compressed air was piped up 2,000 feet to the summit, where it powered up to 16 jackhammers at a time. The workers developed unique methods to stabilize the tools, such as using chains to anchor themselves or their feet to guide the jackhammers with precision. However, the most difficult part was transferring Borglum's design from the small model to the vast granite cliff. Unlike smaller sculptures, Mount Rushmore's immense scale and the 3D complexity of the faces ruled out traditional methods like projecting the design. Borglum adapted a technique inspired by ancient Greek geometry. Using a pointing machine, a device that measured distances from multiple angles, workers could accurately map every detail from the model onto the mountain. This method allowed them to reproduce Borglum's intricate design on a monumental scale. The project faced countless challenges, from weather delays to political pressure and funding shortages. Yet, thanks to the ingenuity and dedication of the team, the heads of Washington, Jefferson, Roosevelt, and Lincoln were completed, creating a powerful tribute to American history and leadership. Astonishingly, the entire endeavor was accomplished without a single fatality, a testament to the careful planning and safety measures in place. Today, Mount Rushmore stands as a symbol of artistry, engineering brilliance, and American resilience, drawing millions of visitors annually to marvel at its grandeur and the story behind its creation. To bring Mount Rushmore to life, sculptor Gutzon Borglum needed to solve the challenge of transferring his 5-foot model onto the 60-foot-high cliff face. He found inspiration in ancient Greek techniques, specifically the use of the pointing machine. This tool, used by the Greeks to replicate Roman statues, could measure specific points on a sculpture relative to a reference point, allowing an identical copy to be created. By taking thousands of measurements, the exact shape of the original sculpture could be replicated. However, Borglum's challenge was to scale up his design rather than create an identical copy. To achieve this, he designed his own version of the pointing machine. This device consisted of a metal arm with a weighted pointer at one end that rotated around a fixed axis. When the pointer touched a specific point on his model, it recorded three measurements: the angle of the point, its horizontal distance, and its vertical distance. By multiplying these values by 12, Borglum could calculate the exact position of the corresponding point on the mountain. Next, Borglum constructed a much larger version of this pointing machine on Mount Rushmore. With this giant tool, thousands of points were marked directly onto the mountain, providing workers with precise locations to drill. Instead of carving out entire sections at once, the workers drilled a series of holes in a honeycomb pattern. The rock between these holes was then chipped away with hammers. This method allowed the team to efficiently remove large sections of rock while minimizing the risk of errors. The work was grueling and dangerous. Workers spent 8 hours a day suspended over a 500-foot cliff, earning just 50 cents an hour. Steel workers frequently descended on harnesses to replace drill bits, ensuring progress continued. Over the years, their hard work paid off, and the first head, George Washington's, was completed. With the carving of Washington done, Borglum focused on refining the details of the sculpture. One of the most challenging elements was the eyes. Traditional Greek sculptures often featured smooth, flat eyes, which could appear lifeless. To make the eyes of Mount Rushmore's presidents appear realistic, Borglum devised a clever technique. He cut a deep hole into each eye, creating a shadow that enhanced its depth. At the center of the pupil, a small, square section of rock was left uncut to mimic the appearance of a reflection. This effect gave the eyes a lifelike shine when viewed from a distance. The finishing touch on the faces was a process called bumping. Workers used tools to smooth the surface, grinding it into a fine powder that left the rock brighter and whiter. Although work on Mount Rushmore continued for 14 years, it was never fully completed. Borglum's original vision included the presidents' torsos carved down to their waists, as well as a grand hall behind the sculpture that would serve as a museum. However, the onset of World War II shifted priorities and funding away from the project. Shortly after, Borglum passed away, leaving his ambitious plans unfinished. Despite this, the monument achieved its primary goal, putting South Dakota on the map. Today, Mount Rushmore stands as a testament to artistic innovation and engineering ingenuity. Its intricate details, from the lifelike eyes to the sheer scale of the project, continue to captivate millions of visitors each year. While the work wasn't completed as originally envisioned, it remains one of America's most iconic landmarks.